Franny's coming to you again with Foundation of Civilization and our changing world. We've had another amazing week. What's been happening around the world? What did I tell you last week that seemed to be fortuitous? Who's taking a step back and reevaluating their defense and attack plans? How are trade negotiations going? I'll tell you below. Let me give you a rundown with my weekly video. It is June 28th, 2025. It is late on Saturday night, although not quite as late as it was last week. This week's news continues to circle around the Israeli-Iran conflict, or now hopefully the peace or ceasefire that they have observed. This time, last week, the United States entered the fray and bombed 3 sites associated with the Iranian nuclear program. Those were Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordow. In retaliation, Iran launched missiles at Al Udeid Air Base. Approximately 12 to 14 missiles were launched, and according to U.S. and Qatar, most of the missiles were intercepted. None hit any targets. According to Iran, the base was obliterated. Now, you remember I said last week I had something that was fortuitous. I had some information that there were planes that were being evacuated from Al Udeid. Well, now we know why. My guess is that the United States had some intel that something was going to happen, so they decided to protect the aircraft. Immediately afterwards, I believe it was on Sunday, the U.S. president declared a ceasefire. Initially, Iran rejected the notion, but later they seemed to agree. Although some skirmishes have occurred, we have seen some attacks that have been going on. In general, the ceasefire seems to be holding. No major offensive have been conducted recently. As I started noting, I guess a couple of weeks ago, our world runs on energy, so that's usually where I start. And most of that energy is still provided by fossil fuels, mainly oil. Oil shrugged off the conflict in the Middle East and dropped this week. I'll explain why in just a minute, or at least some of the reasons why. West Texas Intermediate crude ended the week at $65.52, and Brent ended at $67.71. OPEC baskets ended at $68.13. Now, why are they shrugging this off? Because Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz. Well, I think part of the reason is because most analysts realize that even if Iran somehow closes the Strait of Hormuz, it will be very short-lived. A big part of the reason that oil hasn't gone crazy is, of course, because the hostilities have been paused for now. The bigger reason is that the United States has implemented our shale oil extraction, the revolution in shale oil. And over the past, I don't know how long it's been, 25 years or so. And we are now a net exporter of oil. That puts more oil on the world markets, and it allows it to keep the price low. In other markets, gold also retreated some this week, as people felt a little safer to keep their money in stocks. Gold ended the week at $3,273.23. Silver also followed it down to $35.97. Although I did have a couple of citations, but they're pretty close. The other citation was like $36 and either 0 or 1 cent. Baltic Exchange Dry Goods Index ended the week at $1,521. It also pulled back over the past couple of weeks. U.S. 10-year bond yields ended the week at 4.285%. The UK, United Kingdom, bond yields ended the week at 4.5062%, and Japan bond yields ended the week at 1.4363%. Military and naval deployments, ISR aircraft flights, a lot of the same stuff that we've seen before. A lot of flights over the southern United States, looking into northern Mexico. They also continue to surveil the U.S. mountains. This week, they seem to be interested in the southern United States also, along the Gulf Coast and even up and down the East Coast. Diego Garcia, we still have quite a few aircraft. I believe it's 4 B-52s with the fighter escorts. In the Navy, 292 ships are, of the 292 ships in the Navy, 98 are deployed, 84 are underway. USS George Washington is preparing for its patrol of the Pacific Ocean, which is pretty huge, like half the world. The USS America departed Sydney, Australia. USS Carl Vinson is operated in the Arabian Sea as part of CENTCOM. The Abraham Lincoln was last known to be in San Diego. The Truman, last known to be in Norfolk. And the Nimitz is also working with CENTCOM in the Red Sea. The USS Ronald Reagan, still all we have is it's away from its home port of Bremerton, Washington. The Tripoli arrived in its new base of Sasebo, Japan. It is trading out with USS America, and the America is going to be home stationed in San Diego. The Wasp was last reported in Norfolk. The Iwo Jima departed Norfolk. The Gerald R. Ford also was away from Norfolk. The George H.W. Bush is conducting operations in the Western Atlantic. Now, if you are getting any benefit from this video, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out with the algorithm and helps me, well, hopefully one day fund my habit, my addiction to bringing the news to everybody. European markets. The DAX ended the week at 24,033.22. The FTSE ended the week at 8,798.91. The CAC 40 at 7,691.55. And the IBEX ended the week at 13,969. Pardon me. Now, something that I want to note, that I have extended the chart out here to the maximum, and you can see that the chart, despite the earlier this year with the trade wars going on, most of these indexes are back towards the top of their at the peak of their well, indexing, peak of their graph. So all those trade concerns seem to be calming down quite a bit. Earlier today, Russia conducted another deadly attack in Ukraine. 2 were killed and 17 were injured, and this was Odessa. NATO has assessed that Russia can sustain its level of military operations in Ukraine at least until 2027. This coming from BBC, the Russian service, cited an anonymous senior official in the Defense Alliance. Last weekend, NATO met in Amsterdam. In response to the threat from Russia, they agreed to increase their defense spending. Their goal is 5% of the country's GDP, each country's GDP, and this is a benchmark that's long been sought by the current U.S. president, even when he was president last time. He complained very vocally that they weren't spending enough money on their own defense. Spain was the lone holdout, and they were looking to block the measure, but they dropped their objection after a deal was struck that they would be exempt. And the goal for this funding to be at 5% is 2035, which, I don't know if they have that kind of time. They might. Now, during the meeting, officials were concerned that a disruption in the train service could be an incident of sabotage. And I'm quoting Politico here. It says around 30 cables were damaged due to a fire, local media reported. The damaged cables have impacted the trains running from Amsterdam Schlieffel and Utrecht stations. Ukraine is still experiencing industrial growth pains with drones. They have problems that include poor camera quality, difficulty hitting moving targets, and inconsistent software problems. The Ukrainian army units prefer more reliable alternatives, such as fiber optic operated drones. Now, the bigger conflict in the world is economic. And this week, the Russian president said he is willing to take some losses to change the conduct of the world, the banking system. He said on Thursday he was ready to part with the $300 billion in frozen assets in the West if doing so would help accelerate the shift away from Western-dominated financial systems. This is something that the U.S. president has been trying to fight, but he hasn't been getting a lot of assistance on. And frankly, this is one of those things that you need to be paying attention to watch, because China has a system already set up, already ready to go to conduct these transactions and have them. The Western system is the SWIFT system. I don't remember what the Chinese system is called, but the SWIFT system has like 72 hours to resolve the transactions. The Chinese system has it resolved within a matter of minutes. If they decide to turn everything onto that, that could be very devastating for the Western banking system. This past week, French police have detained 12 suspects after 145 people reported being pricked with syringes during the country's annual street music festival. This would have been last weekend on Saturday. Millions of people took to the streets across France for the, I hope I pronounced this correctly, the Fête de la Musique. But I never studied French, so please don't be offended. Authorities reporting that there were unprecedented crowds in Paris. And I did not have a word on the names of the suspects that were being arrested. Now, a number of European nations are getting pretty irate. I say nations. A number of the citizens in the nations are getting irate with unchecked immigration. In one instance, it was kind of funny. A couple of rival English football fans, well, not just a couple of fans from two different rival clubs. That's football club Soccer for Us Yanks. They put aside their differences and marched against the mass immigration. Now in Ireland, it's devolved into a little bit more. The mobs have been forming and marching against the mass migration, setting fire to one immigrant housing center this past week, and as there have been several incidents that have occurred instigated by immigrants. Now in response, there's also been counter-protest to the immigration protesters, people who are marching in support of the immigration. And as they've noted that most of the immigrants have not been causing the problems. I don't know what they need to do to, and I mean, obviously the United States has a similar problem. Don't know what they need to do to resolve the issue and get immigrants to fall in line and follow common decency and follow the laws. But that's something that we need to look at all across the world. Over in Asia, the Nikkei ended the week at 40,150.79. The SSE index ended the week at 3,424.23. The Hang Seng ended the week at 24,284.15. The Sensex ended the week at 84,058.90. And the Nifty 50 ended the week at 25,637.80. In China, at least 6 people have died in devastating floods not seen for 50 years. This was in China's Guizhou province, kind of in central China. The flooding has spread to other southwestern parts of the country, submerging towns, villages, and this is due to tropical depression. I asked who was reviewing their economic and defense plans, and I came across a interesting piece of information. And in particular, this was China. In the wake of the Israeli and U.S. operations in the Middle East, China is reviewing alternative plans to transport oil and natural gas. They're looking to restart a proposed Siberia 2 pipeline. Apparently, well, there's Siberia 1, but now they're looking at doing a Siberia 2. And I am quoting the Wall Street Journal here. The power of Siberia 2 pipeline project has been mired in disagreements over pricing and ownership terms, as well as Chinese concerns about relying too heavily on Russia for its energy supplies. But the recent war in the Middle East has given Beijing a reason to reconsider the reliability of the oil and natural gas it gets from the region. The people said even as a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran takes hold. Word is that China is also reevaluating its plans and maybe reassessing its plans to take Taiwan. Could be postponing their operations there. In the Middle East, amidst all of the conflict and chaos and now ceasefire, Iranian lawmakers have overwhelmingly voted to suspend Tehran's cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Imagine that. This is after the country's nuclear sites were bombed over the weekend after a 12-day conflict with Israel. The bill was passed by a 221 to 0 vote. Can't imagine anybody who would be able to go home after voting against that when your country's being bombed. It will need to go through the Guardians Council, and then the decision to implement it ultimately lies with the Supreme National Security Council, which most of all of that ends up with the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He's the one who says we're going to do it or we're not going to. In Syria, a suicide bomber killed 22 people at the Greek Orthodox Church of the Prophet Elias in Damascus. This was last Sunday. This prompted Greek authorities call on the Syrian Transitional Authority to do more to protect religious minorities. Of course, the provisional government, first of all, they're not terribly inclined to protect minorities, and second of all, even if they were, they've only got so much power. There's a lot of conflict that's still going on, a lot of power that has to be resolved in the near future. The Islamic State in West Africa province has attacked the Nigerian army's heavily fortified super camps an unprecedented 22 times since February. This represents an attack tempo on par with the worst Nigeria has seen since the insurgency began in 2009, and the first bases were captured in 2013. A confidential legal report accused the Wagner mercenary group out of Russia of committing war crimes by sharing footage of apparent atrocities in Africa. It's been submitted to the International Criminal Court, according to the Associated Press. The report describes instances of torture, mutilation, extrajudicial killings, and even cannibalism allegedly perpetrated by the group, and it calls on the ICC to investigate the actions, as well as the governments of Mali and Russia. Close by, Burkina Faso continues to struggle to kind of find itself. It will need to solve the challenges of education and infrastructure to solve the problems that the country faces. According to the Global Terrorism Index scale for 2024, it ranked number 1, which is the first time in 13 years since the database's inception that Iraq or Afghanistan have not topped the index. The country has been under jihadist attacks in major towns like Guizhou, with jihadists using drones and anti-aircraft guns to fight off government forces. The government is struggling to deliver basic services, particularly in education. The literacy rate of the country sits at 34.9% as of 2022, and nearly half of the sub-Saharan regional average is 67.7%. Both in the quality of education and the number of students enrolled in primary and secondary schools are low. They're going to have to increase that, and they're going to have to work on their infrastructure if they're going to be able to resolve some of these issues. In the Americas, again, I have extended these charts out to the maximum so you can see they're peaking right about where they were before. They haven't collapsed like the administration's detractors claimed they would. The Dow Jones average ended the week at 43,819.27. The S&P ended the week at 6,173.07. And the NASDAQ ended at 20,273.46. Down in Mexico, during a religious festival marking the nativity of John the Baptist, gunmen killed 11 people in Irapuato in the Mexican state of Guanajuato. This is an area that's plagued by cartel violence. In another area, Zapopan in the Jalisco state, authorities have discovered 34 bodies in a mass grave. Like I said, also the area is also racked by cartel violence. It's just a horrific place to be, unfortunately, and there's lots of chaos and lots of conflict going on. This week, a Islamic socialist won the Democratic nomination for the New York mayor. And this has shaken the Democratic Party to its core. Zoran Mamdani, he's come out with promises of $30 an hour minimum wage, increase on taxes, focusing on white neighborhoods, increasing the taxes on the white neighborhoods. He promises tens of millions of dollars for transition treatment for transgender individuals. The Democratic establishment recognizes the majority of the U.S. do not agree with these positions, and they will likely lose ground nationally even if Mamdani wins this election. This is a continuing trend of a Democrat shakeup. The values of the radical wing do not align with the average citizen. Several Democrat stalwarts and key people haven't outright rejected him, but they have selected not to endorse him. So that's kind of a sign of where they stand with everything. For some time, the U.S. government and many civilians have been concerned about Iranian sleeper cells being activated, especially with the conflict in the Middle East that's going on right now. The past admin released 729 Iranian nationals into the country despite terror concerns. Border Patrol agents arrested 1,504 Iranian nationals from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2024, through fiscal year 2024. Of those 1,504 individuals arrested, 729 were released back into the United States. There was little vetting that was going on. Well, this past week, luckily, ICE has raided and detained 11 Iranian nationals, all of whom had potential terrorist ties. Several of them were IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. One of them was a sniper for the IRGC. Last Sunday, a man attempted to cause a mass casualty event at a church in Wayne, Michigan. An alert deacon at the church saw the man approaching, intercepted him, and I believe someone else approached and killed the attacker before he could cause any harm. He did come out and try to come out shooting, but he ended up getting pinned. Now, in an effort to combat the drug trade, the U.S. administration used new powers to force the Treasury Department to cut ties with Mexican banks. The orders are the first actions by FinCEN pursuant to the Fentanyl Sanctions Act and the Fend Off Fentanyl Act. This provides the Treasury Department with additional authority to target money laundering associated with trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids, including by cartels. Now, how are the trade talks going? Canada has decided that they wanted to impose a digital tax and make it retroactive on U.S. tech companies. In response, the U.S. President terminated trade talks. He said that was unacceptable. Canada responded by imposing tariffs on U.S. steel. World markets responded by dropping Canadian securities very quickly. The Canadian dollar dropped. The stock market retreated. Canadian stock market. And this past week, a Russian nuclear sub and other warships passed within 30 miles of Florida's coast on their way to Cuba. It was identified as the Kazan, a Yasin-class cruise missile submarine. This is part of a deployment of a larger naval exercise, a Russian naval exercise in the Caribbean. So thank goodness it wasn't anything too serious. Now, that concludes everything that I have to cover for this week. There are tons of things going on all over the place, every which way. We are watching as conflict erupts, crime erupts, and hopefully some of it gets resolved. I hope that you guys are paying attention, watching as things change in the world, and I hope that you guys are getting prepared for the challenges that are coming ahead. Please like, share, and subscribe. As I said before, it really helps me with my addiction to bringing you the news, and I hope that you guys find it useful. Much love to everybody, and thanks for listening this week, and I look forward to talking to you guys very soon in the near future.